Good day, everyone. I am Joanna Elizabeth Lamalho. Today, I'll be presenting to you about the American literature. So, what is American literature? This refers to the body of literature that reflects the life and times of the people of the United States. America was discovered by the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus in 1492. The American literature is very diverse and interesting in nature. Timeline of American literary movements. All of these periods shape the American history, and we will discuss this one by one. First, the Native American period, dating way back before 1620. This features a lot of oral tradition, song, and stories. The original authors are unknown. Written accounts come from colonization, includes creation stories, myth, totems. Most common aspect of American writings are nature and elements of nature. Next, the colonial period from 1620 to 1750. While rejecting the old systems in Europe, newly arrived colonists built villages and cities and formed new administrations. During the time of the period, Puritan literature and religious beliefs had an impact in literature. Writing is utilitarian and instructive, like sermons, diaries, simple and direct. Religious emphasis on some poetry and some stories. Now, let's move on to the Revolutionary period, dating from 750 to 1815. In this era, writers concentrated on justifying and explaining the American Revolution. This phase is known as the early nationalism after the Revolution. Writers start debating what it means to be an American. It's like a turning point. It is also called Age of Reason. Emphasis on reason as opposed to faith alone. Rise of empirical science, philosophy, and theology. Now we'll dive into Romanticism period from 1800 to 1865. In this era, the authors focus on topics about individualism, idealism, imagination, and nature. They've got a lot of works that heavily use of symbolism. Growth of urban population in the Northeast with growth of newspapers, lectures, debates, especially over slavery and women's roles. Includes dark romanticism, also known as Gothic or anti-transcendentalism. Belief that whatever is wrong with the society, like sin, pain, evil, has to be fixed by fixing the individual first. This includes the Gothic writers that focuses on the evil thoughts of a man, which contrasted with the transcendentalists that men were capable of greatness, great works, or great evil. Now, let's talk about Realism period, dating from 1850 to 1900. The realistic period, which includes the Civil War. The Civil War started at 1861. Major industrial inventions and massive westward expansion is one of the America's most turbulent and innovative periods. This is a counter-movement response against the Romanticism and Neoclassicism periods. In writing, the use of details are more important than a plot. The rejection of romantic view of life as too idealistic. Next, the Naturalism period from 1880 to 1940. Naturalistic writers emphasize grim realism, watch characters in the same way that scientists observe laboratory animals, and sought to uncover the natural rules that govern human existence. Naturalists viewed nature and the universe as indifferent, even hostile, to man. This is like feeling about being worried or unhappy. These three authors who contributed on the naturalism period, whose works are scientific and political, named Charles Darwin, who said biological determinism; second, Sigmund Freud, a psychological determinism; and lastly, Karl Marx, a socio-economic determinism. The Modernism period from 1990 to 1950. This includes all the World War, like the World War I, World War II, the fear of communism, and the start of the Cold War, all had an impact on modern period writers. The so-called The Lost Generation writers were a group of Americans who chose to live in Paris after the World War I. The Lost Generation has also a subgroup, which is the Imagists. The Imagist poetry highly resembles the Japanese haiku, concentrates on creating a word picture, a snapshot of a moment in time. This includes Harlem Renaissance writers, reflect a renaissance of African American authors in a cultural movement that included music and art. These writers had two goals: to write about the African American experience and to create a body of literature by African American authors that could rival anything written by anyone else. Now, lastly, the postmodernism period from 1950 to the present time. This period includes the social protest, which is the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, and the gay rights movement, the LGBT. The global conflict that includes the Korean War, Vietnam War, the end of the Cold War, the rise of terrorism, Gulf War, the 9/11, Iraqi War, and the war in Afghanistan, mass culture and consumerism, media saturation, which is amount of media a society consumes and produces. The citizens live their lives full of media presence. This era includes the rise of technology and space exploration. Period. The writings have become increasingly concerned with societal concerns such as gender and race, and as well as teenage rebellion. A lot of questioning of traditional values. The writings are often critical and ironic. Unfortunately, most individuals often seem isolated and often detached and unemotional. Here are the major themes in American literature. The American individualism, or also known as the self-made man. Next is cultural diversity, a society that welcomes legal immigrants of diverse backgrounds. The American dream, the idea that anyone can become whatever he or she wants to become through hard work, determination, and perseverance. Lastly, tolerance. One of the first principles in American life is religious tolerance. I guess that's all. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, just ask. If you don't have, then that's better. Thank you. The importance of structures. The literary device that transforms words and sentences into a storyline is known as structure. It is essential for constructing a strong narrative. With this, all of the major aspects of a story, like world building, characters, and plot, are stitched all in together. Its goal is to tell the story in the most favorable manner possible for a certain audience.